One of my fondest childhood memories is watching Western dramas with my dad. From the courage and integrity of the Cartwrights in Bonanza to the no-nonsense spirit of John Wayne and Clint Eastwood, I was and continue to stand fascinated by these depictions of the Old West. The cowboy, the rancher, men who valiantly raise families and build communities, even at the expense of their own lives. As we know, land and cattle ownership are key aspects of the history of Texas. The Texas Almanac recounts that cattle's been raised in the state since the turn of the 18th century when the Spanish first brought cattle to the territory. As time progressed, individuals began to own their own livestock and ranches, utilizing cattle drives predominantly after the Civil War. This economic activity was predominantly performed by men who faced rugged terrain, Indian ambushes, cattle rustlers, and stampedes, all to reach the northern markets. The cowboys and ranchers of 19th century Texas embody remarkable qualities of determination, courage, and true grit. Yet, neither the harshness of the business nor the male-dominated field deterred one woman from entering this iconic profession. Lizzie Johnson Williams was one of the first women to lead her own branded cattle up the Chisholm Trail more than once, symbolizing the independent spirit of the Texas West and the lucrative opportunities found in cattle dealings. Today, I'll be sharing Lizzie's story, her upbringing, how she entered the cattle business, her experiences on the Chisholm Trail, and finally, her lasting legacy on Texas history. Lizzie's life demonstrates the character quality found in the men and women who have shaped our great state, the resolve to pursue opportunities no matter how daunting or challenging. Lizzie was born Elizabeth Ellen Johnson on May 9th, 1840 in Cole County, Missouri, the second of 7 children to Thomas and Catherine Johnson. The Texas State Historical Association states that the Johnson family moved to Texas 4 years later, settling near present-day Driftwood in Hays County, where Lizzie's father, a teacher by trade, founded the Johnson Institute in 1852, a private secondary school where one could complete the equivalent of today's bachelor's degree. Lizzie was educated at her father's school and also received a degree at Chapel Hill Female Institute. After her studies, Lizzie returned to the Johnson Institute as an instructor and taught at other schools around Austin as well. Lizzie taught arithmetic, bookkeeping, French, grammar, spelling, and music. Her upbringing was very unique to most women during this era, as she was immersed with education and was able to develop her skills in multiple areas as an instructor. As recounted by historian Sarah Macy, Lizzie was described as a stern teacher and a harsh discipliner. Her strong and tenacious personality would allow her to step into her future career in the cattle business. During the 1860s, Lizzie's older brother John was a bookkeeper for William Day, a friend who ranched in Hays County, who later became one of the most successful cattlemen in Texas. After John died from complications of a Civil War wound, Lizzie assumed her brother's duties for William Day's cattle operations while continuing her role as a school teacher. In this new job, Lizzie first learned cattle brokerage and made investments on cattle and land. She soon conducted bookkeeping for other prominent cattlemen and investors, such as George Littlefield and Charles Whittis. Also during this time, Lizzie wrote short stories for the nation's largest weekly magazine, Frank Leslie's illustrated newspaper. With a knack for making money, apparently, Lizzie soon had 3 sources of income: teaching in area schools, selling her stories for publication, and bookkeeping for local cattlemen. Also during this time, according to historian Ronald Lackman, Lizzie bought a $2,500 stock investment in a Chicago cattle company, later selling her investment for $20,000. As a bookkeeper, Lizzie saw firsthand the plethora of wealth to be made within the cattle business, especially after the Civil War, as thousands of wild longhorns scattered across the country for any individual to claim as their own. Therefore, on June 1st, 1871, Lizzie, at the age of 31, bought 10 acres of land in Austin and independently hired hands to round up wild longhorns to have those cowboys brand her livestock with her brand that she registered, known as CY. Lizzie entered the cattle industry right at the peak of the Texas cattle boom. The Texas State Historical Association states that by the end of the Civil War, Texas possessed between 3 to 6 million head of cattle, many wild and unbranded, worth locally as low as $2 each. Cattle were worth more in the northern markets, with livestock quotas low from wartime demand. One could earn up to $40 or more in the north. Therefore, cattle drives to the northern markets were created beginning in 1866 until about the 1880s with the advent of railroads. The Chisholm Trail was the most used route out of Texas. Ultimately, cattle were the economic salvation of our state, and the steady stream of income helped to rebuild communities impacted by the war. Now, with land and her own registered cattle brand, Lizzie was able to enter the cattle industry herself. In addition to her very strong business management skills, Lizzie also had the connections she needed to succeed in the cattle business. She knew local cattlemen from her work as a bookkeeper, bankers from her land purchases, and cattle brokers from her investments. Now, apart from Lizzie's professional ambitions, personally, she was a very attractive woman, known for her fancy store-bought clothes and beautiful dresses, and was approached by multiple suitors. Historic letters of unwavering love and affection from William Day and Charles Whittis, yes, the same well-known cattlemen of Texas, are just two leading men that greatly admired Lizzie. Still, Lizzie focused on her professional responsibilities and married later in life at the age of 39 to widower Hezekiah Williams, a retired Baptist preacher and stock driver. Even in marriage, Lizzie valued her financial independence, making Hezekiah sign a prenuptial agreement that any of her property and any profits that she earned belonged to her. 7 years earlier, Lizzie had purchased a 2-story home in Austin. Hezekiah simply moved in with her after they were married. Lizzie was a rarity of her era. She and Hezekiah jointly owned a ranch of several thousand acres in Driftwood, overseeing their separate cattle operations. She and Hezekiah made at least 3 trips together on the Chisholm Trail, taking their separate herds each time. The Chisholm Trail, beginning in right here, San Antonio, and going to Abilene, Kansas, was about 800 miles long. As recounted by the Texas Almanac, drives would cover about 10 to 15 miles a day, and depending on what delays were encountered, a drive could take anywhere between 1 to 3 months to complete. Lizzie endured the most common experiences of those who embarked on the trail: scorching heat, rattlesnakes, stampedes, and other misadventures. Once at the northern markets, Lizzie brokered and sold her cattle, paid off hands, and calculated earnings in her ledger. Lizzie was a true cattle woman. Even though she actively rode the range with her cow hands, she always dressed in a very stylish and feminine manner, wearing fine riding clothes and fancy bonnets. She was continually described as tall and stately and striking in appearance. Even when not traveling with her own cattle north, she would still journey as far as St. Louis and New York City every fall to manage other cattlemen's books. Lizzie soon retired from teaching to focus solely on her cattle operations and ranch. She and Hezekiah did not have children of their own, but enjoyed being in the business together. While Hezekiah was not the better businessman, legend says Lizzie would often bail him out of poor business decisions, even writing a $50,000 check once to his debtors. They loved each other dearly. After his death in 1914, Lizzie, then 74, grew reclusive in her home in Austin. She wore widow's black and lived very frugally. By the time of her death, 10 years after her husband's passing, Lizzie left an estate valued at $250,000. In today's currency, her estate would be worth over $3 million. Lizzie's talents in cattle dealing, investing, and bookkeeping enabled her to pursue opportunities primarily accomplished by men. Deemed the cattle queen of Texas, Lizzie's life depicts the strong work ethic and relentless drive of our Texas forefathers and the rugged West. As described by her niece in 1947, quote, "There can be no denying that Lizzie was not only a gallant frontier Texas woman in the cattle trade, but also a pioneer among women in the field of finance. A character so colorful and varied that she's become almost a legend less than 30 years after her death," end quote. Lizzie's legend continues. Her life story is a depiction of the strong work ethic, determination, and strength necessary for the industry that helped rebuild our war-torn state. Let us be reminded by her life, a life as strong and rich as our famous Western dramas, to pursue the opportunities in our own lives, no matter how daunting or challenging. Thank you so much.
Hey, I'm proud to do this with you. Come on, we'll do it. Wow. I'll just share a little bit with you. Amber is now not only doing the commencement address at UT, she's a finance major at UT. She has no public speaking coach other than her family. And look at what she can do, and what an accomplished young woman. On behalf of the Battle of Flowers Association, Vicki and the Oratorical Contest, and all of our ladies in yellow would like to give you your $3,000 scholarship. We can't wait for you to ride in our parade tomorrow. Excellent, excellent job.